Hello and welcome back to Nomads with a Purpose. My name is Gabi and today I'm going to be sharing one of my new video format styles that I'm excited about. And basically I'm about to share with you a story of a day in the life of us as nomads from yesterday, and sharing with you basically the thought process of all of the wisdom and tales and crazy thoughts that go on in my head yesterday, and what I wish I could communicate to you in a simple 3-step strategies for how you can travel more and live your best life, or the number one problem that I see with families and why they can't connect. Instead, I'm just going to tell you a story.
We're Nomads with a Purpose, a family of 7 that hit the road back in 2015 to chase epic climbs, trails, powder, waves, and bucket list destinations. 10 years later, we're still living the dream. From adventure travel guides to unschooling, RV life, self-development, and family connection, we're here to inspire you to live boldly and defy the norm.
So, on a sunny bluebird day in Little Cottonwood Canyon, it went something like this. My mom and me and my 3 siblings, Isabelle, Jiraiya, and Tatiana, hopped in the car to ride up to Little Cottonwood Canyon, and we had gotten reservations to ski at Alta, but I didn't want to ski at Alta because it was a powder day, and so me and Isabelle were going to get dropped off at Snowbird. So we hopped in the car, and the big thing that's crazy about how me and my family kind of live and connect and operate is that the second we get in the car as a family, we all start talking. Not like we're trying to necessarily talk above each other and like try to be heard, although that does happen sometimes. We all just have so many thoughts and ideas that we want to share of what's going on a thinking, feeling, and idea-based level. So we hop in the car, and my mom immediately starts sharing, and usually we all have different personal development things we're all working on. We all have different businesses and projects and creative ideas and desires around our sports or our business or other creative things we're working on. So we hop in the car, and my mom is currently doing this course on Mind Valley, that is called the Silva Method. And so today she hopped in the car and she was really excited to share with us some of the key points that she had just recently learned in the course. And so it's cool when we're a family of people who all love personal development, because basically she can digest something and give us the cliff notes, and I'm digesting something, I give her the cliff notes, Isabel's digesting something and giving everyone the cliff notes. And this is just a normal for us. But so she opens up her course on the Silva Method, and she pulls up to this one clip, in this little 1-minute clip. And so basically, instead of me telling you that you need to go do the Silva Method, I wanted to share with you this thing that I discovered in the Silva Method through my mom, through the cliff notes of what a day in the life of our conversation is. And so she pulls up this video, and Vishen, who founded Mind Valley, is presenting the Silva Method course. And it was talking all about, in this lesson, about how much of a problem it is if you are not clear with the universe about what it is you want. In other words, if you're flip-flopping, you're confusing the universe. Now, this was really relevant for us because, for me, I've been trying to manifest a new truck, and we'll get back to that in a sec later on in my story. And my mom has been going back and forth for about a year on what house she wants, and if she wants a house at all, where she wants a house, if she wants a house with land, if she just wants the land. It's been this huge contemplation for her and for her whole family. And she has always said that I think that I haven't manifested it because I'm not exactly positive on what exactly I want. Now, the really cool part about this clip that it was showing us, that she showed us from the Mind Valley course, was that Vishen was explaining in the Silva Method course that your burning desire really has to be as clear as your restaurant order. And he gives this story about how if you sit down at a restaurant and you would order food, you would sit down and you wouldn't order, say I want the pasta carbonara, and you would put in the order, and the waiter would go to the chef and put in the order with the chef, and they'd start making your pasta carbonara. And then the waiter comes back and asks if you're doing good, and you go, actually, no, can you cancel my order for pasta carbonara? I decided that I actually really want pizza right now. And they go, well, of course, yeah, no problem, let me go tell the chef. And so the chef cancels the order and says, actually, I need you to make a pizza. And you're sitting there longer, the waiter comes back, and you go, actually, you know what, I really don't want that anymore, I want to order dessert first. And so he goes out to the chef, and the waiter puts in an order, and they cancel your order for pizza. And that's basically the same way manifestation works when you're not clear about what you want. And I definitely see this firsthand. We see it, my mom says it, that whenever she wanted, like, her new carbon RV, she got it the second she was absolutely clear that was the RV that she wanted. And so maybe you could use this as an insight into your life, that maybe, is there something in your life you've always saying that you want, but you always contradict yourself with the split intention about what it is that you really want. I catch this in myself when I think about manifesting the truck that I want. I know exactly what truck I want. I do not need to open Marketplace, and I don't need to open and research more things about F-250s and F-350s. I know what truck I want, so why would I give myself extra data that's just going to add to doubt to make it so that I am creating split intention around what I want? Now, this is not necessarily mean that you have to want the thing that you thought you wanted. Maybe you don't actually want it that bad. You do have to get clear and body compass what you really want. But that's the first thing that was insightful in our day yesterday that you can apply to your life. The second thing was that there was this part she skipped forward to where there was 3 questions that Vision said that everyone must ask themselves who wants to manifest great things into their life. And this was really cool. I have a lot of thoughts around this. So first was, what experiences do I want? Second was, what growth do I need? And it doesn't necessarily mean that what do I need to do to, like, if I do this, then I'm going to get this. It's just, what growth do I as a human need next in my life? And 3 is, how do I want to contribute that? I think he specifically said, what are all the ways in which I want to contribute to the world? So starting off with that first question is like, what are all the experiences that I want to have? I thought that question was really interesting because basically that question alone is something that we're trying to express and share and teach in all of our videos and all of the content we make, and inspire you to think this way, because our whole life as living as an RV nomads, full-time travelers, traveling the world, we've always thought about what are the experiences that I want to have. And this is the more specific way, essentially, to get you to realize that what is it that you actually want? Because in the end, we are remembering experiences. We aren't remembering, like, the color of the shirt that we were wearing and how hot it was out on the day that we enjoyed our life. We're remembering how we felt doing what and with who. And that's what makes up an experience. And so here's what was interesting about that, too. Even though we've been raised, essentially, through the last 10 years to think this way. And it's what we work with, me and my mom, so much with our clients, that we're trying to help them get more clarity on their desires. But one thing I had an epiphany moment about yesterday was that, here I am struggling to manifest this truck. And it's funny because for two or 3 years, there's something I always did on New Year's. Instead of making New Year's resolutions, I created bucket lists for myself every year. I used to go in my journal, instead of writing, my New Year's resolution is this, I would go and create a bucket list around, this is basically what I want to experience this year. And that doesn't mean every single thing happened, because I usually would write about like 30 to 40 different experiences. But I'll tell you one thing. When I wrote down specific experiences, a lot of things did happen. I want to say something like 60% of what I experienced, of what I would write down in my bucket list experiences, did happen. Bucket lists are more effective than lofty goals. When you visualize your success, usually it manifests much easier, but it's more than that, because it's success that you visualize through a positive emotional experience. And so when you write down specific experiences, specific bucket list goals, you have a more clear picture of what that micro experience is. And so it might be something like, I'm drinking coffee, in a cabin in the mountains in the Italian Alps. That's a specific experience that you're visualizing. Whereas when you say, like, I want to go to Italy, that's not a specific experience. I was thinking about how I used to do this so easily. And to rewind really quick, back a couple months ago, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I had to sell the truck that I've had for a couple years now. And it's the first, it's the setup that I had when I first moved out of the RV with my parents. And so I had my own truck and trailer setup. And so this truck was basically it was like my baby. It was like, honestly, I joked because I wrote a caption about this, about like, when I let it go, it literally felt like letting go of like an ex-boyfriend. That truck meant more to me than most people have ever meant to me, because it was like my source of freedom, my independence. It was like, I lived out of it for so long. And so when I let it go, I was letting it go from this place of, I was told by this other full-timing family a long time ago, through the grapevine of my parents, that they told us one time, you have to let go of the cup to grab the quart. And we've used that saying in our family a long time ever since then. You have to let go of the cup to grab the quart, the larger container. Like, if you want a greater life, you have to let go of the comforts that you have in your life currently. And so even though I love that truck, I also hated that it also represented some version of poverty, because it was like always breaking down on me, and there was no AC, and it was kind of uncomfortable. And I loved it because for a long time I was really attached to the identity of having this tough, like, cool truck, and like I can handle hard things, and it's a manual, and it's really badass, and I love this truck. But I also realized more and more that I was no longer suiting my standard of living that I wanted to have. I wanted to have things that were luxurious, and I didn't have to always have the hard version of things. I could relax. It was okay. And so I had to let go of that truck, and I believe that I let go of that truck to send a signal to the universe that I was ready to level up. I was ready to do the next thing, to step into a higher level of financial abundance and even a higher level of contribution. But simultaneously, in doing so, I have this incapability to actually let go. And so ever since then, I have struggled to put so much pressure on myself to up-level my income and up-level and be more, do more, all these things. And it's quite frankly made me sick in the end. I ended up basically, getting whatever the flu that's going around, and basically had so much trouble recovering because of how much my thoughts are and how much pressure I had on myself was continuing to perpetuate me being sick, which that's a whole side tangent conversation about how your thoughts make you sick, but it is true, and we can make a whole video about that in the future. But for now, basically, tying that into the previous question, though, I had the realization that maybe I was not visualizing my new truck as a part of an experience yet. Maybe I was too hung up on the truck, and instead of thinking about the truck, I need to also take my own advice and visualize seeing that truck in an experience. So I challenge you guys to do this with me. Take something that you think that you want, and instead of visualizing the thing you want, visualize an experience with the thing that you're going to want. And so for me, that's like, I'm going to have my new truck, and I'm going to imagine sitting in comfort as I have to drive this summer from Squamish all the way down to Salt Lake City to go to my best friend's wedding. And I'm going to be sitting in comfort. It's going to be easy to do that drive instead of my truck last year. I remember I had to drive from Salt Lake City all the way across to Tahoe, and it was absolutely miserable because I had no AC, and it was 100 degrees in the Nevada desert, and I had a sunburn on my face because I had to drive with the window down because my AC didn't work so I could stay cool. And so it's going to be so great when I have my new truck. And so create that visualization for yourself. The second question is about what growth do I need? And along those lines of things that we're so good at and we naturally do, and are things that our brains are addicted to, and like how my brain is addicted to putting so much pressure on myself, everyone kind of has this thing that your brain is addicted to. That's called your personality programming. We have an entire online course about it. It's called the Self-Understanding Quest in Be the Hero Academy. And basically, we're all addicted to some negative belief about ourselves, but a negative perception. And so I have thought about this question, and when I first had this question come up when Vishen asked it in that Mind Valley course, I was like slightly exasperated. I was just like, what growth do you need? And I kind of just like, because it's not like I think I've been doing everything perfectly, but I do have this tendency as like an Enneagram 3 and a South Node in Capricorn. I have so much of an tendency to always commit to disciplined actions to get things done. I'm not going to be the person who didn't achieve the goal because they didn't work hard enough. I will always be the person, in my head, this is a story I'm telling myself, I will always be the person who works hard enough to accomplish it. And yet at the same time, here I am this question is being asked to me, and I feel like the natural response is, what growth do I need? And maybe an entrepreneur who hasn't succeeded would be like, I just need more discipline. I haven't done the hard things. And maybe that is partially true. I'm not going to say that this is entirely not true, but I had this realization that I had the thought that maybe the secret to that growth that you really need, isn't actually doing what you're naturally good at, but looking to see where you could do it differently. So instead of looking at the discipline that I really need to, probably need to do more discipline. No, I've already been doing that. I've done that forever. It doesn't necessarily work. I realized that for me, maybe in this situation, I actually needed a mission or growth or a purpose that was so simple that I could hold it amidst changing circumstance. Whether you want to blame it on the fact that I have a family of 7, whether it's the fact that I full-time travel, whatever it is, the fact about life for me, and I think for everyone, despite those unusual circumstances in my case, is that life is changing constantly against. Even though I would see myself as a very adaptable person, the irony is that I noticed in this thought process yesterday that maybe I'm not as mentally adaptable as I see myself, and maybe I need a mission or a purpose that is so unshakably grounded and simplistically aligned with who I am that changing circumstance and changing people and changing emotions and literally places that I'm living in are always changing so much that it needs to be so simple that changing circumstances can't affect it. That was my version of how I could apply that. But for you, it might be a little bit different. Now, this is where we really like to bring in astrology and different archetypal systems of growth paths, because they are, frankly, as much as we change, we still have the same programs that we fall back into. So whether your Enneagram programming, that your childhood programming that you're getting pulled back into is calling you again, or it's your South Node in astrology, the thing that you're so good at but you don't necessarily need to do more of, can be a guiding point. And there's all these things that we use as guidance points, and in the end, all you have to ask yourself is, well, maybe it's not the thing that you're naturally good at, naturally called to do, but what does that tell you? What does asking yourself, what do I need to do to grow? And whatever your automatic answer is, maybe you can find the answer within that. You can question your immediate response to find the real response there. So we were sitting in the car, and we're about 30 minutes into our conversation. We're only at question 2 at this point, question 3 at this point. And so at this point, I started to have like a little bit of a mini life crisis in these contemplations. Here's where things start to get a little bit interesting, because as much as I can share all of the questions that we contemplated at the start of our drive, this is the fire that most of us find ourselves in, either on an unconscious level or a conscious level. And this is where my mind starts spiraling into anxieties or whatever crazy thoughts, because I start to think about all of the things I'm constantly worried about. Because just that train of thought alone of thinking about how could I grow? What do I need to grow? How do I need to grow? Had me on this train of thought where all of a sudden I'm thinking, I'm a failure. I'm not doing good enough. I need to be working. I shouldn't even be skiing today. I need to go work, but I don't even know what to work on. And then this brings in another issue, because I've also had a little bit lately, basically too many ideas and not enough belief in one singular thing. There's too many things that I believe in, and not one that I believe in much more than others. On top of it, I added in this personal life experience being in the world where, unfortunately, I cannot go back to being as normal as I was before RV living, and I've just seen what I've seen so much to, like, when I'm in the world, as much as I love my life and I love my friends and things and the lifestyle I get to live, I also simultaneously have this thought where I always feel frustrated that it's like 99% of the world is just so happy living in their illusion, and I really should just be okay with that. But if you're listening to this video and you've ever had that feeling where you're just so frustrated, that's like, how are people, they don't get it, they don't understand. Like, I'm guessing if you're watching this video right now, you subscribe to us, there's a part of you that kind of feels like that. Maybe you're not like entirely, but a little bit of you that's like, gosh, why do people just keep going on with this way of living? And that starts to get to me, which also contributes to this basically conglomerate of mini life crisis that I experience. Now, I will add that part of this mini life crisis being stimulated is because my mom, being the amazing investigator and questioner that she is, started stimulating this conversation where we take the information that we acquire, and my mom is very adamant about, like, we don't just acquire data, we apply data. Like, if we're learning things about personal development, we're not going to be those people who are, like, just getting the dopamine from the data. We need to be applying these things, otherwise, like, we're just acquiring data. That doesn't do us any good. And so we start having this serious conversation about, like, how am I contributing to the world? And which partly spirals me into this crisis of, I'm a failure, I need to be working more, and all these sorts of things. I need to be working toward getting clarity. And basically, in the end, I end up feeling simultaneously frustrated myself, frustrated my mom, not necessarily because it's her fault, because I'll tie in later that there's another reason behind this. But basically, we get dropped off at Snowbird, and I'm already a little bit pissed off. We're dropped off at Snowbird and we're waiting in line. And like I said, it was an hour and a half drive to get up to Snowbird, so inevitably the lines are long. So we wait in line for 20 minutes at the bottom of the Gadzoom. We wait in another 20-minute line to get to the top of the Little Cloud. And this is when the next moment happens that causes another crisis. Basically, we get to the top of the Little Cloud, and I can see that there's already avalanche control going on in the Road to Provo bowl, which is like this big bowl that has like freshly touched powder from basically, I believe there's something like 50 inches of snow came down for a week, and the Road to Provo bowl was opening up. It might have been for the first time during that whole storm cycle, and so people were lining up because there was avalanche control. Now, we hadn't done a single lift or hadn't done a single run yet because we had purely gone up, me and Isabelle. We had already sat in the car for an hour and a half, and we stood in line for basically another hour. So it's been 2.5 hours of waiting to ride. And I was torn between two decisions because there is very few feelings in the world that compare to the amazing feeling of making S's in completely untouched powder. If you have had this feeling before, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you get it, because that is a feeling like no other. And I saw that they were close to opening up. People were starting to line up. But me being the untrustworthy, person who does not believe that other people actually know what's going on, I was like, oh, they probably don't even, it's probably not actually about to open. People are probably just getting overeager and like think that it's going to open. Well, we get to the top then, and even though I really want to wait in that line just in case I'm wrong, I also was like, I've been waiting for 2.5 hours and I haven't done a single run. And I'm looking down the back of the Mineral Basin and was like, we could drop down into Mineral Basin and get in line, and by the time we come up, it might still be a line, and then we can get in line then. I look down, and the line to Mineral Basin lift to get back up is also really long. And I'm sitting there in like a paralysis, going, I don't know what to do. Isabelle, just pick. And so Isabelle's like, we should just get a run in, because she's probably not overthinking as much as I am. We drop down. The run's not that good. The line ends up being 30 minutes, even in the singles line that we were waiting in. And by the time we get to the top, the gates had, of course, actually opened, and people were already riding. And basically, even though I got to ride down the freshly ridden powder, it was not an entirely freshly untracked powder ride that I was hoping to get. Now, to make matters worse, I was frustrated, and my frustration was just boiling over at that point, because this was the point in the day where I wondered if I should just present a masterclass on why humans should have licenses to exist in public. Because if you've ever skied at a resort on a crowded day, you probably know the feeling of wondering why some people are allowed to be there. Now, I don't mean that literally. I'm just saying from an emotionally frustrated perspective. We're on the road to Provo, and this picture right here is a pretty good example of how much you have to traverse along this ridgeline to get to the powder. Now, you can already see in the picture that most of it was already ridden through, but me being on a snowboard, to take this traverse, you got to keep a lot of speed, because it's actually flat, and you can't unstrap one boot to skate along the traverse, or you'll sink into the powder. So you got to stay strapped in, which means you have to keep momentum, which means that you can't stop. And people, being lovely humans that they are, think that it's a good idea to stop in the middle of the single lane track. As you can also see in the picture, there's really no way around off the track if someone stopped in the middle of the road. So basically, a couple of idiots later, I'm losing my mind. And I definitely am thinking to myself at this point, if we all have these computer softwares that run our brains, there's definitely some people who are running on Windows 98. But with loving kindness, I go, it's fine. I really can't have that much attached to this. Point being, I was like frustrated 1, frustrated 2, frustrated 3. I was at a breaking point. And I sat there for 1 sec and took a deep breath. I sat there for a sec, took a deep breath, and rode on ahead, because I really can't complain if I'm getting to live my life where I still get to ski today, and I'm still getting to ride a beautiful bowl, and I'm still great snow. Catch myself. Moving on, though. Between that frustration that's still ruminating in my unconscious, I'm also thinking about the comment that my mom made in the car before I get out. Right before I got out of the car, she said something to the extent of, like, I think the reason that you don't show up and contribute to the world is because you're afraid of people not wanting to hang out with you anymore. And I was, like, furious about that, because I was basically like, that is completely not true. And then you run the whole, like, child, teenager temper tantrum where it's like, you don't even understand me, you don't know me, all of that thing, that whole victim story that we all run at times in our life. But here's the thing. Between those two experiences happening, of my frustration skiing or snowboarding and my experience of contemplation and confrontation in the car, I had a shift happen when all of those thoughts came together. I realized that the real issue was that I needed to lead my own life. Now, this was the substance of what made me, kind of have a really big awakening in 2023, which led me to want to write a book called Love Me, about the generational self-worth crisis, because I lived my whole life people-pleasing and have fear of rejection from both my parents and fear of rejection from friends. It started off with friends and eventually realized that it was a fear of rejection from my parents, and really had the whole guilt and shame and feeling like I was never enough. And in the end, I realized, like, you really have to lead your own life, because that's a complicated answer to arrive at. Now, leading your own life contains a lot of different sub-actions and sub-steps. But in the end, I realized that, hey, I needed to come back to, if I'm really pissed off by this conversation and I am really pissed off by my expectations of what today was going to be like, I really need to reflect and consider what's at the root of this. At the root of it, I was frustrated that I was not leading my own life, and I didn't really know how. Now, part of it is hard, because if you don't have clarity on what you want, and you don't feel like you can get there, then it is impossible to lead your own life, and it is impossible to break away from the fear of rejection, the fear of betrayal, the fear of judgment. So between that realization, I was able to kind of break it down into two smaller steps, two smaller points of awareness that could help you if you ever have those moments where someone pisses you off, or you're having a bad day because of either traffic on the mountain or traffic in your car. Whatever it is, you have to remember that oftentimes, more often than not, when people are projecting their own thoughts, fears, and feelings onto you in their words, rather than actually directing them at you. And this is really important if that person who is saying those things to you is also going through, a difficult time or an emotional turmoil. We so easily get our entire day, our entire week thrown off by something someone says to us, whether that's like work, school, family. And so often we don't really realize that people are, in their words, they are literally projecting out their own personality programming. And literally, people are saying to you what they want to say to themselves, or they're saying some contradiction that affirms their own self-view. But literally, their words are either a reflection of what they want and need to say to themselves, or they're avoiding saying to themselves and want to say it to you instead. I say that not from blaming other people's perspective, but rather you can't overcome that sort of like emotional volatility reaction in family, particularly if you can't start to empathize and see into someone else's shoes. And that's why I mentioned that, especially during difficult times, you have to, if they're going through a difficult time, you got to put yourself in that other person's shoes and think, is it possible that they're projecting something onto me? You don't necessarily have to call them on it. You can if you have the communication skills for it. But if you're a family and you're like losing it with your significant other, if you're a kid like me, losing it with your parent, you have to think about these things. If you're a parent losing it with your kid, you have to think about these things, and you have to empathize and wonder if maybe, who are they and what are they really thinking, feeling, and fearing? And that will help you mitigate your emotional reactivity and emotional conflict so much. The second thing is that you have to, if you are the person who's trying to resolve this and not have the emotional turmoil in your life, so that you're not that reactive person who's having a meltdown on the mountain. Do note that I didn't actually have a meltdown on the mountain, just an internal meltdown, so I didn't make a scene, okay? You have to furiously confront what you're really scared of, knowing that it is rooted in a desire for approval, validation, or support. I will say that again. Knowing that it is always rooted in its desire for approval, validation, or support. At the core, people are afraid of loss and rejection. We are afraid of not having something to attach to. We are afraid of being alone. And so if you can ask yourself, if what you're worried about, angry about, could come back to fear of being alone, then you're winning. You are crushing it on this mindfulness and mindset game, but it's going to take some time to realize that there is a connection there between your trigger about being pissed off about traffic on the mountain, like in my case, and the fear of being alone. Because to me, in that example, and I have these like frustrations with, they're just normal conversations with my mom in this example, but it happens with other people too. I have to think to myself, is it possible that I am afraid of being judged or rejected or criticized? And is it possible that I'm basically having an emotional reaction to not getting approval or support? If yes, give yourself what you need to receive from other people. That is what the essence of breaking the generational self-worth crisis is all about. Through that contemplation, I was able to have a shift in expectations that shifted my reality. So instead of my first 2 runs, basically I was disappointed because I was expecting perfect powder. And the funny thing is that when I got back in the car with my family for the rest of the day, I told them that, after the first 2 runs, we actually had a really good time. Ironically, because even though the 2 first runs were technically the best 2 runs, my expectations were so high for perfect powder, thinking I was going to score, that I was actually not that satisfied and fulfilled. Whereas the rest of the snow for the rest of the day on the other runs was still really good, but my expectations were lower. Like, it wasn't that untracked powder, but it was good snow on the runs. And so it was fun. On top of it, like, me and Isabelle had a conversation. We're having conversations on the lifts all day. We feel seen and heard, and we're laughing and having fun. And this is the power of just shifting your mindset to start to see the positive. Instead of, on top of that, I thought about the conversation, right? I gave myself the advice I give to other people, and become a leader in your own life, and to give yourself what you thought you wanted to receive from other people. And so instead of feeling judged or inadequate or beating myself up for being I should have been working today and I should be doing more, I changed it to I'm gonna figure things out. I've done pretty good. I'm actually doing pretty good considering the fact that I've been sick for 3 weeks, and considering the fact that I've pretty much worked for the last 6 years of my life, and considering the fact that I made 2 really amazing documentaries on YouTube in the month of January before I got sick. I'm doing pretty good. That's not to say you don't keep doing better, but how often is our feeling of being judged by other people or feeling criticized by other people a reflection of the fact that we are telling ourselves those things? If I believed I was doing good, I probably wouldn't be bothered by other people. So I really have to reinstill even further this idea that I am doing good and things are going to work out, which is much harder for me to believe, but I'm working on it. You guys can work on it with me at the same time. Final thought here. There's something about being in groups of crowded people that makes me really feel like we're in a simulation. I don't know about you, but there's just something about it, because I think when you're standing in nature, you feel this connection, and then there's just all of these people that are just doing the same thing. Literally makes us feel like a copy and paste, and we're all just doing the same thing on this conveyor belt. And it makes me wonder, maybe it is all just a game. There's this idea, the simulation theory, right? And the simulation theory, for those of you who don't know what that is kind of what the name implies. It's the idea that our perceived reality, the thing that we call the world and life and reality, could actually be a computer simulation. Possibly created by a higher being that we may call God or the universe, but also could not be. The whole perceived reality being a computer simulation is still based on the idea that it is a simulation, like an actual sim, coding the world. And one thought that I had recently about this is if you are at all up to date with any sort of news that you see, whether in anything, you're likely seeing AI in your feed, AI being talked about, AI generating things. I mean, have you seen the thing about AI that has generated all these poems that are basically better than like they did a poll basically, like they had AI generate a bunch of poems and they asked people if they found these better than a William Shakespeare poem, and people found that the AI generated poems were better than William Shakespeare based on a poll of people's opinions, not like as an objective thing, a subjective thing. And then of course when they were told that it was AI, then they were like, oh well, it's actually not that good. But basically, like, AI creates so much now to a disturbing degree, which I'm not saying to scare you. I'm saying it only in the sense that if we're living in this layer looking at AI, ChatGPT, and going, wow, ChatGPT can make all of these things really easy, what's to say that we're not 2 levels down? What's to say if we can make an AI that can create things, then what's to say that we are not the product? We are not in the ChatGPT reality already. What's to say that we are not already a computer-generated program that's calling us reality, a life, the Earth, the solar system itself, and we think that we were just here, but instead it was a computer simulation that generated us, and we think that we're creative people. And who's to say that it's not just a game? Now, there's like this philosophical idea, right? And supposedly it's a 1 in 3 probability that we're actually living in a simulation, and I don't really think that this matters that much. But I do think that it's an interesting thought process, because this does not mean life is meaningless, and it does not mean that, like, oh, we're doomed forever. It actually has nothing to do with that at all. What it does tell me, though, is that if that is true, if it is a game, then maybe actually playing the game the right way is how so many people in the world, not so many people, but that small uncommon 1%, get what they want always. They always get what they want. There's people in the world, like, if you listen to the philosopher Esther Hicks, right? She always shows up and she's telling you how you can have everything that you want. You can talk to these manifestation experts and they always get what they want. And there's these entrepreneurs and successful business people and even just small, like, average people who seem to just get what they want easily. I'm saying is that if we are in a game that has been coded, is it possible that we are just listening to the wrong rulebook, and if you just follow the dang instructions, like all of these things that we hear from mindset mentors and gurus and manifestation mentors, if you just listen to what they said, don't you think that maybe things would come to you really easily if it were a game? Why do you think that this whole rat race mentality has been set up when it makes no one happy? It makes no one fulfilled in the long run. When we follow this kind of, basically, the rat race society, we do as we're told. We go to school, we graduate, we get a job, we buy a house, we get married, have some kids, we go on some trips, have some vacations, and we try to enjoy our life. Then our kids grow up and we try to stay together as a family. That's sort of, like, nothing wrong with it, but really just not deeply fulfilling as a lifestyle. Maybe that's the rule book, but not the code, right? This game that we live in could be coded for success. We might be coded into our soul with the keys to our own awakening, and yet we follow the rule book for life, and that actually is our own demise that keeps us in a cage. So if along those thought processes, you just choose to follow along that thought process, what if you were just to take the road less traveled? And that road less traveled is different for everyone. It just starts by questioning things, questioning your thoughts, and looking deeper and deeper into what you truly desire, because you can't do anything different if you don't want anything different. So what do you want? What experiences do you want to have? We're back at our starting question. What experiences do you want to have? So here's my takeaways for you guys, because I just shared with you a lot of different randomness, but it actually comes down into 5 different things. First, define your desires, your wants, with precision, because if you're not precise about what you want and you just say, like what I do, I want a black F-250 with black rims, instead of thinking about how it's going to feel to drive that car when I have to make that really long drive from Squamish to Salt Lake City this year, and my AC is going to work, and my radio is going to work, and my car is not going to ever break down on me, it's going to run smooth, going to get good miles per gallon, run on diesel, all those things. Second, you gotta cut energetic ties with the opinions of others. Often those opinions don't have anything to do with you, and it's so easy to think that they do, but it's really a matter of looking at that person with empathy, try to understand them, see them, what they possibly could be thinking and feeling that would lead them to say that, and have some empathy. But you can still have a conversation, but it's not associated with you. You own your worth. You can lead your own life. Third, life has imperfect runs, whether on the mountain or in business, and even though this one sounds really simplistic, even someone like myself, who I feel like this shouldn't be that hard for me, on a really rough day, it still gets the best in me. Adjust your expectations, and the ride is beautiful. 4, there will be idiots everywhere. You're gonna make mistakes. You'll regret some decisions, like I should have just waited in line at the road to Provo instead of going down Mineral Basin like I thought I should have, and you're gonna want to lose it at times. Let those things go. It happened. It was in the past, and I say this because there are so many bigger things that we have trouble letting go of that you gotta start with the small things first. Let go of the small things, focus on the good that has come from it. Start small on a daily basis is gonna help you do that with those bigger things you're having trouble letting go of, which might take a little bit more work, but start small. And last, if reality is a game, if it is, then playing by the game maker's rules, aka playing by the code of the game, isn't just a rebellion against the current system, it's actually the blueprint to your best life. Well, that's all for today in this long story saga, sharing some life lessons that I get to experience in my life on the road, in our life as the Robledo family nomads with a purpose. If you liked this video format, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll continue to make videos like this. If you hate it, you can also let me know too. That's okay. I won't take it personally. I'm cutting energetic ties with your opinions. So let me know what you guys think, and I look forward to sharing with you next time on Nomads with a Purpose.